Še en primer dobre prakse, tokrat v Flamski regiji v Belgiji, ki je vodilna evropska regija na področju zbiranja, sortiranja in recikliranja odpadkov, nam bo predstavil Jorn Verbeeck, vodja flamskega programa trajnostne rabe materialov pri Agenciji za ravnanje z odpadki v Flamski regiji. Kako daleč je še do družbe brez odpadkov in kaj je ključno za dosego tega cilja? Izvolite, gospod Verbeeck.
Thank you, and good morning also on my behalf. It's the last presentation before lunch. I'll try to make it not too theoretical. I'll also reassure you, I won't show any picture of any, dirty things or things with plastic weights or turtles, so you can go happily into lunch. Before we start, maybe 2 or 3 thoughts to begin with. When I got the invitation to speak at the conference, it was like, what do you expect of me especially? And the answer was like, well, we're in Slovenia, maybe it's a bit comparable to the Flemish region. It's a compact region. You've been regarded as a front-runner in waste, circular economy. And it was like, yeah, maybe we're quite a bit humble in the Flemish region. But it's a story of 30, 40 years, and they asked me to sum it up in 20 minutes. So it's nearly impossible, but I'll give it a try. The second thing regarding that question is that ever since the 2010 Belgian presidency of Europe, we've been working closely together with Janez Potočnik. And you ask yourself the question this morning, are we just going to be observers or will we play an active role? And I think when I look at the audience here today, you will play an active role. And especially with a commissioner like Potočnik, with whom we really enjoyed working together. He really was a good pioneer in the circular economy, and I think it's the least I could do today to share our story of the Flemish region. So let's get started. So this is the circular economy, don't need to introduce that. We've been talking about this during the morning presentations. We will be talking about this during the afternoon. And hopefully this is where we will arrive by the end of the talk. So within 20 minutes, this is where we arrive the future. So let us take you back like 30, 40 years to the Flemish situation. This is Flanders, like compact region, densely populated. And why is it important? Well, let me first tell you something about the spirit of the time. 30, 40 years ago means this is the spirit of the time. This is the Club of Rome report, 72. So there was a mondial awareness that we were running out of resources. But it's also the time of Woodstock. So there were people thinking about what will happen to the world. How do we, as a mondial population, pick up the message and what can we do? We move a bit further. This is the early 70s in the Flemish region. So densely populated, this is people going to the streets. It was public rising because as a small and compact region, landfills in every community were literally going into the people's gardens. And people were like, we cannot accept this. I mean, no landfill in our garden, but can you imagine today that people are coming to the streets to demand of the government legislation, a framework to work around the impacts of waste? And this is a little bit later, like 10 years, 84, we raised like public collection stations for waste. And it was important for people to see, to give them an alternative. What can we do with our waste? But also an awareness like, this is the volumes we collect as a community, as waste we want to get rid of. And just by showing the people, by asking them to bring it to the collection stations, they were like, that's something, a dirty problem we really need to work on. And we got a responsibility ourselves. This is 92, the first Rio conference. Why is it important to show all these pictures? Well, I mean, we cannot talk about the circular economy without putting it into the right time frame. What is the story that lives within a number of countries within the world, and what is the responsibility that people have and want to take? And this is also back to the 80s, 90s in the Flemish region. This is Indever. It's the first private-public cooperation. So in 86, the Flemish government established a recycling company for the chemical industry in the Antwerp harbor, stating that we cannot do this alone already in the mid-80s. We need to work together, not only government, but also private industry. This is a quite known graph with figures not only showing that we optimized the volumes in collecting household waste, we got one for industrial waste as well, but also showing that we phase out landfilling to nowadays only 0.5% of the waste collected. Why are we doing this? I think Stephanie already referred to that. We are using more and more resources every year. And this is quite interesting. It's a colleague of mine who drew this graph like a year or 5 ago. And at that point, we were talking about resources and will they be, well, depleted in a number of years. And we were talking to the team and he was like, well, they always told me it's for the next generation, the generation of your grandchildren. And he was like, I don't believe it anymore. What will happen? I've just given birth to a little baby girl. What will happen in her lifetime? And it's not a discussion about is it true or not that we will run out of resources. It's about are they still economically winnable resources? And then this graph shows that during her lifetime, so you see it at the top of the slide, that during her lifetime she will be faced with a number of resources running out. And then it becomes a real story. It's not like a framework or about, well, there's something wrong we have to set right. No, this is about a little baby girl who will be confronted with some problems during her lifetime. So we talked about this too. They're not evenly spread across the world. And the imports by the European Union are far outreaching the exports we have on resources. And what is important too is that the Flemish region is a region of small, medium SMEs. And nowadays we only talk on political level about jobs and energy. Well, if you look at this figure, that for a number of SMEs, and a lot of them, the resource cost is rising to more than 40%, then it's not only about jobs and energy, it's also about resources. And companies in the Flemish region, because of all the tradition, they know that it's a really important parameter which they have to take into account. This is where we are today. It's made on member state level, so you see Belgium in the top end next to Austria and Germany. If we would take the Flemish region, we would probably, I try not to be humble this time, really on top of the chart. But it's nice to talk about this. But then suddenly we realized, well, we are really hitting the ceiling. I mean, we've done everything in waste collecting, sorting, recycling, but we cannot go on the same route anymore. We have to think about doing something different because we cannot keep showing this graph for years and years. I mean, if we want to change something, there must be something like we've had sustainable materials management, the resource efficiency roadmap, we had the green economy, cradle to cradle, circular economy, but what can we do as a region? And there we talked about, well, perhaps we're a bit, I don't know, privileged because we've been working on this for 30, 40 years, and at that point, you look at the graphs and you're like, well, we're doing fine. There are a number of countries who still have to do a lot of work we have already done. But you want to take this challenge one step further. And you want to not only recognize the story, but also play an active part in it. And this is the story you know. And it's been a story in the Flemish region, as I said, for about 30, 40 years. So what we want to do now is we want to rethink this linear economy. But with the question mark, will it also take us 30, 40 years? Because it's easy to talk about graphs and closing loops and circles. But how do you manage this? And there we, together with the Netherlands, thought about, well, transition management. And what we have seen over the past few years is that you need a window of opportunity. You need to have political leadership. You need to have a strong basis, as we had with the waste management. But you also need a number of front runners who are showing that it's possible to do something. And to sum it up, the 30, 40 years we had in the Flemish region is that we started by looking at waste legislation as to control an impact. We want to limit the impact on the environment. So we first had rules and controls. Then we thought about, well, we got the legislation there, we just need to control. And then we moved to the recycling society, trying to optimize the volumes. And now we feel that we really need to move with all this basis to the circular economy. So what does it mean? Is that Stephanie has been talking about the multi-actor cooperation, is that we brought together not only people from government, but also from industry, from universities, from NGOs, telling them that we know the story, we know the challenge, but if we are not going to work together, we only fill in just one piece of the puzzle. And the first meetings were really, well, hard and confronting, because you know that putting an industry together with an NGO around the table, there's different agendas. And we told them, we're going to be outspoken and honest towards each other. It's not about, well, finding a common goal which is acceptable for everyone. No, we're talking about being ambitious. What is really needed, and if we start talking and reasoning from that, what is the role you all have to play, and how do we find each other? So let me show you a short movie on where we are today when we talk about circular economy in the Flemish region.
Take, make, and discard. Precious resources are finite, yet we are producing waste. But what was linear before, we are now turning around. By smart design, products and parts that are no longer needed can be easily given a new life. By collecting, reusing, remanufacturing and recycling used plastics, building materials and metals, we can feed them back into new production cycles. By turning waste and even greenhouse gases into raw materials and high-value products. By sharing, by innovating, like insects converting food waste into new resources. Welcome to the circular economy. In Flanders, we have very few natural resources. We cannot continue to simply buy them elsewhere. We have to recover them from our own urban mine. We have many assets that put us in a leading role internationally. We've been at the forefront of collecting, sorting and recycling for 30 years. And with the Flanders Materials Program, we push further towards closed material loops. In the Flanders Materials Program, entrepreneurs, researchers, policymakers and civil society join forces. This is where pioneers of the circular economy in Flanders think and act together. Smart use of materials allows us to save and to earn money by exporting our know-how and technology. World ports, a strong logistics sector and a central location. These allow Flanders to become an international hub for the circular economy. The circular economy will create new jobs. We map the skills needed and ensure that today's and future employees are prepared. We further develop our strength in recycling valuable and complex materials, thus creating new industrial activity. We investigate how circular business parks can advance growth in the Genk region. We build dynamically. A school becomes a care centre and vice versa. And we offer tailor-made support to companies venturing into a circular activity. The circular economy offers opportunities for us all. The OVAM and the partners of the Flanders Materials Program want to make tomorrow more beautiful. Are you with us?
So let me come back to the graph of the circular economy. What we realized in the Flemish region is that even though, with all the experience we had, we are never going to realize a circular economy in the Flanders region alone. I mean, that's simply impossible. So we've been thinking about what are our strengths. You've seen the logistics sector, you've seen a number of industry, you've seen the recycling rates. What is our role within the circular economy, and how do we connect it to the other pieces of the puzzle? I think we've been working on transition management by defining what are the strong clusters in the Flemish region. So it's the metals industry, the chemistry and plastics, the building and construction, the bioeconomy. And we need a number of enablers. What can we do on eco-design? What can we do on regulation? What can we do on new business models and financing? And what are the actors we need? And therefore, it's important, I think, as a policymaker, how do you build a framework to make this happen? And in my experience over the past 5 years, I think it's about bridging the bottom-up and the top-down. We often heard stories about bottom-up initiatives like, oh, it's only the repair cafes. They will not change the economy. No, that's true. But on the other hand, it's not only about talking about top-down initiatives like the new waste and circular economy package. It's how do you connect the two, that the one listens to the other, and how does the other one make all the concepts really into concrete actions. Let me give you one example. You've seen this graph, or you heard Stephanie talking about it, the 20 critical materials for the European Union. And when you look at this graph by Tom Gradle of the International Resource Panel, the metals, the materials in pink are the ones that are really crucial for our industry and economy, not only in the Flemish region, but also in the European Union. And less than 1% is recycled of the pink ones. Knowing that they're crucial, we got a big challenge ahead. And that's when we thought about, well, if we got such recycling rates in the Flemish region, can we turn the region into an urban mine? And what does it mean? Well, we nowadays collect a volume that is higher than the Eiffel Tower in Paris just on electronic waste. And we also get a number of facilities with companies like Umicore, and the introduction also stated that when you collect a kilogram or a ton of cell phones, you get lots more gold out of it than when you take them from primary resources. So it's important to see what are the assets you have and how do you turn them into just one small sector, one piece of the circular economy. So we looked at the supply chain in which electronic devices, metals were involved. And we looked at the Flemish situation. What is the potential? What are our strong assets? And what are things we can work on with partners? So here you see the number of applications in which all these metals are involved. And when you look at your situation nowadays, whether it's a car or a mobile phone or a laptop, I mean, you cannot do without it. And therefore, it's really important to see as a region, what can you deliver not only to your own region, but also to the rest of Europe and the world to keep supplying these products at a far better way. And I think what you also see in the ports in the Flemish region is that for one region alone, it's really not possible. So how can you develop a smart specialization, for example, around electronic devices, in which you can also import waste from other regions within Europe by just stating, well, this is a strength we will be working on. And I think if you then go back, I'll skip a few slides because otherwise we'll run out of time. If you come back to this picture, well, would it be possible to draw this as a future image? No, it's not possible. I mean, we don't want to be like a self-sustaining island within the rest of Europe or the world. It's about connecting your strengths, your insights, your jobs, your potential and culture to other parts within Europe and the world to see how can our strengths combine with theirs. And I think that is the key in the solution to the circular economy. And also to a region like Slovenia is what are your strengths today? What is the current culture? What is the education? And what can you not only work on, but offer to other regions within Europe as a policymaker, but also as an industry, as an NGO, as a research institute and university, to really see how does the puzzle fit and how do we get to the closed loops which were presented a number of times today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verbeeck, for illustrating to us a very good example of Flanders. We have time for one very short question. Aj kakšno vprašanje?
Any questions from the room?
No? There's one. In the back.
Hi, John. Welcome in Slovenia. Lenka Burja speaking. Just one quick question. I know that OVAM actually was established by the ministry. Mm-hmm. Is this still so? Because my question is, what would be the best approach for the country like Slovenia when we are starting to work towards transition to circular economy? How to tackle it from this institutional way of approaching. And the question is because it's very important, of course, to have all stakeholders to cooperate together. And who is in place to put these strings together? What's your opinion? Thanks.
Well, it's a bit of a difficult question because it started by the government, the OVAM in '82. And it's still owned by the government, but we have been working over the past 5 years towards a public-private cooperation. And there you see both an industry struggling like, how close are we going to work together with the government, but also a government struggling like, who is actually setting out the rules and taking the actions and who's deciding on that. And what we've seen not only on Flemish level, Belgian level, or European level, also international level, is that you need strong leadership in every kind of sector. And it's really important that people find each other, are clear about their ambitions, and talk with an open mind, how can we support each other by not lowering the ambition and keeping the triple P into account. Because when you look at a company like Umicore, they have been rated a number of years ago as the most sustainable company in the world. But the moment that Umicore switched its business model from a mining company, I mean, they were a really dirty company, to the most sustainable company in the world in recovering metals, well, because there was a government framework in making it possible that there were the volumes for them to recycle. And so you see that over the past 20, 30 years, it has always been an interaction between government, industry, the science and knowledge institutions, but also the NGOs who are really talking about the consciousness. What are you hoping to do, and what's the time frame, and what's the basis on which we all work? So it's never only the government, but as a government, I think over the past few years, we've been pushed in the corner as in it's only rules and regulations and oh no, the government. But I think when you look at the number of examples, and it's not only Umicore, that government was often the first actor to, well, whether it was via green public procurement or by setting a number of indicators and ambitions, that together with industry and the other actors in society, they realized in, well, putting small steps forward. And I think for Slovenia, it's also, you get a strong leadership, I think, when you look at the audience, but also 2016 framework I heard talking about. Well, you get the framework, start working, and it will not go like successfully with every step. You will fail, and you will find new niches, new opportunities, but be open. What's your position within the European Union, and what other actors do you need, other regions do you need to get this story started? But I think you've started today, so.
Thank you very much. There'll be more opportunities